Hi, everyone. Welcome to season 5 on the Hall Pass podcast. We're so excited to be back. It's been a few months actually since we've recorded, and it's been quite busy, but also because of COVID, we've been gone for a little while. So we're super happy to be back. We hope to bring you guys some new content to this season as students and parents are becoming really anxious with college application process and just the high school journey in general because of COVID. So we want to do what we can to help you guys ease that anxiety and help you guys in terms of planning. So a lot of new information to come. Today we wanted to share with you the top 4 college admissions trends. One of them has to do with obviously SAT-2 cancellations, SAT-1 writing cancellations, and then the National Merit Scholarship, the PSAT cancellations. But we also want to give you guys some tips and advice on your college admissions journey today. So again, we're super excited to be here. So I have with me Jay and Richard. So hi guys, welcome.
Hello.
We're super excited to have you guys here today, obviously. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I feel like there's a lot of good information that we need to share today. So I'll go ahead and start with the first trend. So many of you guys might already know this, many of you may not, but one of the biggest trends into this admission season is an increase in early applicants, but a decrease in early acceptance. So for those of you guys who might not know about early and what early is, there's many different types of early decision, early action, restrictive early action, single choice early action. We actually have an entire episode in one of our seasons where we just talk about earlies and what earlies look like. So if you guys want to learn more about early stuff, then you guys can go check out that episode. But otherwise, our biggest thing that I wanted to share with you is that more and more students are applying early, less and less students are getting accepted. So let me just throw out some numbers there for you guys. 62% of increase in early applicants from 2019 MIT to 2020 MIT. So more students, more than half, 62% of more students have applied for early. 57% decrease overall in early acceptance rates across the country, and 50% less students are being admitted to early schools like Harvard, for example. They accepted 14% early students in the past, 7% early students now. So a lot of numbers here, but for the most part, the things that you guys have to understand, I think a lot of students and parents ask me, like, why is this happening? Why are there less students, getting accepted? What's the situation here? And I think one of the biggest reasons right now could be to COVID. Because of the pandemic, a lot of people are taking gap years. If you guys don't know what gap years are, basically you get accepted into college, but then you decide, hey, I'm not going to go this upcoming year. I'm going to take a year break and then I'll come later. And there's a lot of reasons why students do that. It could be due to safety concerns. Like they don't want to go on campus. They don't want to get COVID. But it might be because, it's not a normal school year. A lot of colleges are doing like virtual. A lot of colleges are, doing half virtual. There's obviously no school events. We actually, the three of us went to UCLA, and one of the big things about a school like UCLA are there school events. There's so many opportunities and events for students on campus, and they can't do those events anymore. So students are like, well, I don't want to miss out on these opportunities. So I don't want to go to school for a year, have to pay, full tuition or close to full tuition, don't have the full experience of what my college freshman year would look like. And so they opt to do a gap year so that they can come back the following year and try to have that full experience. Now, the more students take gap years, the less space that college admissions have for the incoming freshmen. So this has kind of happened due to the pandemic. Now, another thing is, because things are becoming more challenging, especially due to the pandemic, I would say the biggest thing is, still applying early could help you at the end of the day. Applying early could increase your chances of getting admitted, especially for early decision. So because of that, it's really important for students to start preparing early. If you think about applying early, your application is due November 1st of of your senior year, which means ideally everything that you've done, your leadership positions, your impact projects, your community service, right, your awards, your academics, right, all of that should be pretty good by the end of the summer of your junior year, ideally, right? Of course, you have like August, September, October, if you think about it, those short 3 months, but really for our students, a lot of our students actually use those 3 months for college applications, college essays, and just wrapping up some of the things that they've been working on. So if you want to apply early, which, you know, we do recommend, because if early applicants are increasing, admissions are decreasing, you imagine what regular admissions looks like, right? It's probably going to be even more competitive because more students are going to be applying for regular. So what we would recommend overall is for you guys to make sure that you are completing everything that you can. Start planning early, like even throughout the summer of your 8th grade. Do as much as you can. Find out your major, your passions, your interests, your strengths, your talents, right? And plan early so that you can finish by the summer of your junior year. Do everything you can so that you're prepared to apply early. That means like academics and testing and all of that as well. So that is one of the unfortunate trends of this upcoming year, but also just a really good thing to consider that more and more students need to start preparing earlier.
What would you say for students who are considering applying an early decision, but they can't visit the colleges physically, so they're not sure if they should be kind of entering into this binding agreement? What would you say for those students?
That's a great question. So because of the pandemic, a lot of schools are offering virtual info sessions and virtual college tours. That's another reason why I would recommend that you start planning early, because if you want to do early decision, you probably want to start researching colleges early. You probably want to start understanding what colleges offer and what kind of colleges you like. I've also actually be giving, because the 3 of us right now, we're working on college list with our students right now. And my students ask me that same exact question as a junior. They're like, you know, how do I know, what am I looking for when I'm thinking about the college that's the best for me? And one of the activities that I've been doing with my students is think about 5 things that are non-negotiable for you when it comes to college. Think about 5 non-negotiables, right? So one of them could be, let's just assume, really good dorm food. If I don't have good dorm food, I'm not going to this college. That could be a non-negotiable. Maybe another one is professor to student ratio. If the professor to student ratio is above 100, I can't go to that school. You might have these non-negotiables. So I have students list them out, choose their top 5 or their top 3 and start looking for schools that have that non-negotiable, you know, so that you can, you know, definitely think about going to the school. But I would say, I know it's hard because you can't actually go visit. A lot of schools are actually offering you to sit in virtual classrooms. Princeton, for example, has a bunch of classes that you can sit on where a professor's actually teaching. They let you engage with students in the classroom by having discussions with them. So there's many opportunities that I feel like a lot of schools are rolling out, but that again, I would recommend starting early. Do you guys have any tips on, like, any advice on what students can do maybe for early decision choices?
So I approached it 2 ways, right? You call it non-negotiables, I call it deal breakers. But I also try to do it the flip side because, frankly speaking, if you guys want to put me on a hot take right now, like at your age, if you are trying to veer away from things, and if you already have too many things you're picky about, you're going to have a much harder time adapting and being much more, you know, effective and productive in that college experience. So I try my best to focus on what do you want to have, not what you know. I suppose in like a positive way. Are you looking for a place where you can continue to do the arts? Are you looking for a place where you can continue to do that? And if they don't have it, I don't want students to be in the mindset that, oh, they don't have it, so cross it off my list. Because sometimes the school may not have one thing, but they'd be incredibly great at others, right? So my opinion, when it comes to just college listing in general, I know it was the question specific to early, but college listing in general, just don't be picky now. They're going to be picky about you. So wait till all the cards fall in March and the results come out and then be picky.
Yeah.
By that time, I hope there'll be the first rollouts of vaccines. Other tips, if you want to get to learning more about a school, probably, I think the phrase is day in the life of. I've seen a lot of those on YouTube, day in the life of Cornell, day in the life of USC. And so we got to learn viscerally for now, guys. It's all we could do to play safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just echo the virtual information sessions. Because of COVID, I feel like a lot of colleges have been rolling out
Yeah.
these virtual resources that you really should be taking advantage of, because there's now so many different things that you can do just by going onto the college's website. And I do agree with Jay too. I think a lot of my students, when I'm helping them build their initial college list, some of them are a little bit too, picky, I guess, in terms of what they're looking for in these colleges. So when I ask them, like, are there any regions maybe that you prefer, they just immediately say, like, I don't want to go to the South. I don't want to be in the Midwest. And they kind of take out this huge chunk of colleges that would be potentially really good fits for them, just because they have this kind of stereotypical idea of what these places will be like.
Yeah.
So yeah, keep it a little bit broad. Like, usually my initial college list with my students are pretty big in the beginning, anywhere between maybe 30 to 40 schools. And we kind of like narrow it down from there. So keep your options open, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Be open-minded. College is also about the journey and the experiences. So, you're not going to experience new things if you're trying to stay in places that you're comfortable. So I really definitely agree with that. Okay, yeah, that's awesome. I hope that was helpful for you guys in terms of early, but I'm glad that we actually really hit about colleges as well. I'll let Vincent go and talk about trend number 2. It's a big trend right now because there's so many things that are happening, obviously, with COVID and test cancellations, but then College Board just dropped a huge bomb last week. So really, there's a lot of new news there. So yeah, Vincent, tell us a little bit about the cancellations.
Yeah. So the big news recently is the fact that the SAT2s have been officially discontinued, meaning they're just not happening anymore, at least for domestic students. Those are just completely gone. For international students, they can still take the SAT2s in May or June, because there's other reasons for why they may need those scores in the future. But for most of our listeners, probably you're not going to be able to take these exams. The other thing is that the SAT-1 essay section is also being discontinued. You can take it up until June as well for domestic students too. But at a certain point after June, they're not going to be offering the essay anymore, and we'll talk about that. And then the final thing is that the National Merit Scholarship for a lot of our students, it usually is offered in October, and there's one in January as well that students can take. But many of my students, at least, couldn't take any of these National Merit Scholarship qualifying exams. And there's something called an alternate entry that you guys may be interested in, where you can potentially still qualify for this scholarship. So those 3 things I think are the big ones for this year. But starting with the SAT2s, I guess maybe it would help to first understand why these were canceled. And the College Board kind of listed out a few major reasons, one being that they wanted to reduce demand for students, another being that AP exams are becoming more popular, while the subject tests, the SAT2s, are becoming less popular. So they're kind of discontinuing that. Fewer colleges nowadays are even requiring or recommending it. That list was already really small. MIT, for example, made students in the past, they required students to submit SAT2 subject tests, and even that they are now going test blind for these subject tests. So it's becoming less important to a lot of colleges. So they're kind of just removing it altogether. So if you are still, planning on taking these subject tests, unfortunately at this point, again, you can't. There's really nothing you can do about it. If you've already taken the SAT2s, you probably can still submit it, but I think we're going to have to see within the next few months how colleges will be responding. Some schools may go the MIT route and just go completely test blind, so that they're not, looking at some students' SAT2s and not others. But again, I think we'll see. For now, I'm assuming that many colleges will go test optional for the SAT2 subject tests. And what does that mean if you haven't taken the SAT2s? Again, you cannot take it at this point. What I think will become more important for you will be your AP scores. The AP scores and the SAT2s played a very similar role in the past. The AP exam scores were another way for you to demonstrate your proficiency in specific subjects, and the SAT2s did the same thing. So now that the SAT2s are gone, the AP scores are kind of the only or the major way that you can show proficiency in these particular subjects. So now this might be weighted a little bit more heavily in the eyes of college admissions. All right, so that's the SAT2. The SAT1 writing section is also canceled. And to be quite honest, I feel like the essay has been less important already before it was discontinued. I think the College Board is starting to just kind of accept the fact that this isn't something that many colleges are reviewing. So they're just removing it altogether. Again, they are allowing students to take it all the way up until May or June. If you want, you can opt out of it. But if you are signed in, or if you are planning on taking the writing section, I don't think it's absolutely necessary. But what do you guys think? I can't see any reason for it, because scholarship opportunities, the requirements or the recommendations that colleges are having for these exams, it doesn't seem to be something that many colleges even need to see. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, so I mean, I was kind of thinking about this before too, and for some of my students, it's like, I'm going to take it because I've already been preparing for it. So my students, they've either gotten tutoring or they've done prep or something, and they feel like it's wasteful to not do the writing section. And they're like, I don't want to, I want to be able to show that I'm good at it. But like what Richard said earlier, at the end of the day, it's not really going to impact college admissions, because they're not really going to be looking at the writing section. And before already, they weren't looking at the writing section as carefully. It wasn't a determining factor for college admissions anyway. And so, no, I don't think it's necessary. If you guys are preparing for the March exam and you already signed up for the writing, you haven't really been focusing that much on writing, go ahead and just contact College Board to cancel the writing part of your March exam. Focus on the other sections a little bit more to try to heighten your score, to make your score better. But I don't really see another reason to take it, other than if you've already been preparing for it and you feel like you're going to do really well, you really want to show college admissions that you are awesome at writing for that section specifically, then I think that could be a reason. But otherwise, I can't really think of anything else or another reason. I don't know, Jay, what about you?
I would say forget it. Let it go. It's gone. Old news. I think that even prior to them announcing this a year ago, they were talking, there's mumblings and concerns that these types of essays don't really reveal the true aptitude of a student. Even if the measurement is to be like an impromptu time thing, there's not much you can extract of value from that. Oftentimes it could skew a misinterpretation of a student. And so, good. I would lose no sleep if one of my students said, I decided to cancel the SAT essay portion, just take the test to focus on the score. I'd be like, yeah, good for you, man. Sticker. Let's move on.
The only other thing I could think about, which I just would be like, if you're an international student, or if you you're an immigrant, for example, and you want to corroborate like your through your test scores, your ability to speak English well, then I guess I could see that. But I think ultimately colleges would probably care a lot more about your grade in your English class than your writing, your SAT writing score anyways. So yeah, ultimately I think probably unnecessary at this point for you to take the SAT 2 essay or the SAT 1 essay. But okay, and then the final one, the big one again, if you were not able to take the PSAT this year, so either in this past October or this January, you actually can still qualify for the National Merit Scholarship. And the way you would do that is by filling out something called the alternate entry form. And a lot of my students were unaware of this. This is, somewhat new here, but if you haven't taken the PSAT, and if you have an SAT score, and that's important, you need to have taken the SAT 1 sometime between August 2020 and June 2021. But if you have a good SAT score during that time and you did not take the PSAT in either of those 2 months, you can fill out the alternate entry form, which is due by April 1st of this year. And you can request the College Board to submit your SAT score to the National Merit Scholarship Corporation, and they will actually determine if you can still qualify for the National Merit Scholarship. So just because you did not take the PSAT does not mean that you are not able to qualify for this scholarship. There's still an option for you if you can still take the SAT 1 during, again, August to June. So ultimately, I mean, those are some pretty substantial changes. Like when I heard that the SAT 2 was canceled or discontinued altogether, I was amazed because this has been around for so long. And the fact that it's just completely gone now is really crazy. But just some overall tips and advice again, because the SAT2s are being discontinued, your AP scores, your grades in your school, these are probably, again, going to be weighted more heavily. And so you really want to do your best to try and demonstrate proficiency through your APs, your SAT 1 or ACT, and obviously through your grades in your schoolwork. And then finally, if you're planning on taking the SAT 1, at this point, if you are signed up for March, May, or June, I'm thinking that the essay portion really is not that important at this point, since many colleges won't even be considering it. So if you want to go ahead and just opt out of it, just get rid of the SAT essay portion. It's one less thing that you have to worry about.
I wanted to just say one thing really quickly about the PSAT. So my students, I have some students who've been preparing for the ACT. They weren't really thinking too much about the PSAT, and now they're like, do I need to try out for the National Merit Scholarship? Should I take the SAT between now and June just so that I can get the National Merit Scholarship? But they've already gotten like a 34, 35, 36 on their ACT score. And I think for those students in particular, I mean, there's many other ways to get academic awards. National Merit just happens to be one of them. So it would just really depend on your personal time. So if you have a lot of time right now to study for the SAT-1 and you think that you can do fairly well and you want to study for something and try to get the award, you know, I would say that you probably want to hit above like a 1480, 1490 or something so that you can make the cutoff for the National Merit. Then do it. You know, there's no harm, but I don't think you should make the NMSQT your priority. So if you don't have a lot of time and you're not, you know, you shouldn't just be studying for the SAT just so you can try to qualify for the National Merit. There's many other ways to get academic awards. There's competitions, there's writing competitions, there's math, you know, science competitions, but there's also like AP Scholar and an AP Scholar with distinction, you know, and honor rolls at your school. There's many other ways of getting academic awards, and you might want to spend that time focusing on your community impact or some sort of extracurricular activity. So that would just kind of be my last really quick thing. And then about the SAT-2 subject test, I feel like a lot of students have tried to take the subject test for language proficiency specifically. So maybe your high school's like, hey, if you take SAT-2 Korean with listening or SAT-2 Chinese with listening or Spanish listening, whatever, then you will have the opportunity to not have to take language at our high school because that would be proficient, right? If you get an 800, that will be proficient. So a lot of students have been concerned about that because they haven't been studying for the language or they haven't been planning on taking language at their school. They only have 1 year left, they're a junior or something along those lines. You can ask your high school counselor first on what other options you have because now the SAT-2 subject tests are canceled. But for Korean, for example, there's other types of proficiency exams, including TOKL, T-O-K-L, and TOPIK, T-O-P-I-K. There's also IB Korean, S-L and H-L that you could potentially take. There's many proficiency exams, and there's same thing for Chinese, Spanish, what's it called? College Board also has something called CLEP tests, C-L-E-P, which are kind of like subject tests, except for their college, they give you college credit, C-L-E-P, CLEP tests. And so for Spanish with listening, you might want to take, you know, a CLEP test to show that. So there's many other language proficiency exams. So don't feel like this is like the end all be all. Just talk to your high school counselor to see what other options there are to take those language proficiency exams, or tell them, hey, there's TOPIK, there's TOKL, there's a lot of these Korean tests. Can I take one of these? They're nationally verified, they're NCAA approved, whatever. Tell your counselor, and then maybe they'll be like, yes, you can go ahead and do that, right? So that would be just one last thing I wanted to mention about the SAT-2 subject test as well. Okay, thank you so much, Richard. Let's go ahead and go to trend number 3. And I want Jay to kind of dive into this because he loves to talk about personality. He loves to kind of focus on characteristics. And so the next really big trend is exactly that. You know, the tests are kind of going away. What other things become really important at this time? And really, there's going to be a hyper focus on personality based on students. So Jay, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
I think the emphasis of kind of scanning for personality, and we'll talk about like how that's evaluated in the application process, but the premise here is that COVID has brought on an unprecedented amount of challenges and barriers. And I would argue, and I'm just throwing out a ball there, that like maybe 90% of students will understandably, and in some cases rightfully say, what could I have done? I can't do anything because of COVID. And so herein lies, I would argue, the first big personality that needs to really exude itself into the applications and the essays. And it's your sense of impact that you want to make. Were you the type of student who said, hey, my club's shut down, so what could I have done? I just sat here, versus, hey, my club shut down, so I started a Discord server and I figured some blah, blah, blah. Are you sticking to the tried and true STEM club formula, or are you adapting to the times and realize, hey, maybe we could use our STEM club to host maybe a vaccination information workshop so people could be more understanding of what's going on there? If you're adapting to the times, that's generally what we would love to see. Or are you just trying to follow a cookie cutter formula?
Yeah.
Right? So that impact of leadership is about being dynamic. It's about being responsive to the times, temporal. And the second one, I think that follows along with that desire and that willingness to be the impact maker of your community, the problems around you, is the resilience to follow through with that. So that's the second thing that I'm really looking forward to in when I'm evaluating or interviewing a student. It's, can you show me a history of resilience, a commitment? Do you try something and suddenly drop it off? Do you make a lot of excuses? Or do you commit to it, right? Do you grind it out? I think in terms of resilience, I wouldn't often just quantify it as numbers or hours. Like, I did 400 hours of community service this week. Because oftentimes resilience, while it could show in the resume and application and activities in that way, I think also is a resilience of character. It's about when you write your essays about how you had a hardship through this time and how from that came a greater sense of purpose or a greater sense of resolve. And so these kinds of qualities, I think, will really play an important role in when you meet with a professional like us, where we ask you, hey, what kind of stories can we work with here that you have in your life? And what would be the best to tell to position you in a place where the colleges can recognize your strengths. So far, I've seen a lot of impact. I've seen a lot of resilience from some of our students, not all, but we're working on it. And then last but not least, I mean, there's always that X factor. Every mom has said this to their kid if they're aspiring to get, you got to be unique. And I don't think that's changed. But I do have some insights for parents as well as students as to how you can turn, you got to be unique into something a little bit more of a tangible advice, okay? The way I see it, uniqueness comes in two forms. The first form is in terms of your experiences, okay? We have students that have climbed Himalayan mountains and they're only 15. That's a unique experience. And I totally understand if you're a high school student right now living in the SoCal bubble, like, dang it, I don't have anything exotic like that either, right? But it's not just about that in terms of unique experiences. It's also about the unique vision you have for the problems you see around you. Let's say, for example, you're really interested in business. That's arguably the most popular Asian male major right now in Southern California. Business has been popping off, all right? So then I take them deeper and go, hey, what about business are you interested in? And if they say the generic things like, oh, it's, my parents own a business, I enjoy it, it's fun, that's not unique. But what can be unique is your reasoning behind your major interest. Jay, I'm particularly interested in business because I want to learn more about microfinance. You see, I grew up in a rural region in China, and back there was no electricity. There was no credit score, no banks to give you a loan. So it's really hard to get off your feet. And so I started learning more about what could be done about that through the International Money Fund and what's happening internationally. And that's when I stumbled upon microfinance. And then I put my extra twist to it, my uniqueness factor, my Zoomer generational DNA into that. What if we made an app that can make it more accessible? And like that, now you're a unique student. Mm-hmm. All it takes to me is the idea. And then it's the follow through.
I think it's what you said, Jay, the unique approach to solving problems could be uniqueness too, right? What is
Absolutely.
your unique approach? Business is a vast topic and subject and genre and niche. But what is your unique approach to solving problems could be a uniqueness factor as well. So that's a really good one too.
And this will all show up at the end game. Okay, students, at the end game, right before we submit everything, it'll show up in the applications, your resume, your activity descriptions. It'll show up on the teacher recommendations. It'll definitely show up on the essays. They all build up. It's investments you put in throughout 9th grade to 11th grade, the grind and the experience you push then has to be portrayed in that way. And that's obviously what I help with during the senior year process. But now more than ever, I'd probably say the questions have really revolved around teacher recommendations, because how do you get good teacher recs if you're doing virtual? I've been getting a lot of questions. So I want to move us over to trend number 4. Jenny, if you want to take that over, I want to hear what you got to say about teacher recommendations in this.
Yeah, this is probably one of the biggest things that students are concerned about a lot is teacher recommendations. More often than not, it's like, well, what do I do about teacher recommendations? How do I improve teacher recommendations? Any of those types of things. So I feel like that's the next trend. So one of the things that college admissions predicts right now is 90% of teacher recommendations that will be submitted for the class of 2022 are predicted to be average rec letters. So what was it before then, Jenny? That could be a question that you might want to ask. So before, about 60 to 70% of teacher recommendations were considered to be average. Vincent, you've done UPenn, admissions before. How many, recommendations out of 10 would you say you've come across that were like amazing and incredible?
I would say that literally it was probably 1 in 20 actually, that where you have an amazing recommendation that's very enthusiastic, very personal, maybe like 2 pages long, and is just very specific about what the student would offer. In most cases, the teachers will say good things. It's not going to be negative by any means, but it really will kind of just kind of melt into the rest of the recommendations that you're reading through. And then out of nowhere, you'll just read one that's just amazing. So not often.
Yeah. See, and that's the reality, I think. The reality is that teachers write lots of recommendation letters, and your relationship with that teacher has to stand out in the eyes of the teacher, that not only it stands out to them that they're like, wow, this student is awesome, but that they would take the time to write a really good recommendation letter for you, because that is their time and their energy, that they care about you as a student enough to go out of their way to write a 2-page excellent recommendation letter, right? So I feel like that's something that you guys should definitely think about. Now, because of virtual learning and because of distance learning, that's going to be about 90%, right? Richard just said 1 of 20 recommendation letters that he came across were like, wow, they stood out. Now, because of virtual learning, they expect that 90%, most 9 out of 10 recommendation letters that they would be reading would be just average. So what does that mean for you guys? Well, if you are the one student out of those 10 students that happen to have an excellent recommendation letter from your teacher, despite COVID, despite virtual learning, despite the fact that every admission officer knows how hard it is to get close to teachers right now. Number one, teachers are stressed, right? They have to teach virtually, which is not easy. They have to turn everything over from in-person to virtual overnight. That's not easy. And yet they were willing to write you an incredible recommendation letter because they felt that strongly about you. That's going to say a lot about you as a student, which could be the reason why you get tipped over to get accepted into college, right? Into that specific college. So despite virtual distance learning, it's not an excuse to not be close to your teachers. This is more reason than ever, I would say right now, that you need to support your teachers. Teachers are exhausted. Teachers are doing, if you had to put in energy to teach in person, virtual is so much more challenging to teach with the same amount of energy without you actually being able to feel that energy inside of a classroom. So supporting your teachers, trying your best to get close to your teachers, being there to be like, hey, how are you doing today, Mr. J, right? Like, I know that life is hard right now. How are you doing? Is there anything I can do to help you? And trying to develop those teacher relationships is really important. And also, because this is a time where teachers need your support, how you treat them during this time is going to be so important. It's going to pay dividends to what your relationship would be like with your teacher in the future. It's like the boyfriend, girlfriend, or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever relationship analogy where you say, you were with me when I was from rags to riches, right? You were with me when I was poor. You were with me when I had no money, when I had nothing to give, and you still supported me. So now when I'm rich or when I'm better and I can give you everything, you deserve it all. And I feel like with teachers, it's kind of that same mentality where right now they're struggling, they're challenged, they have so many things that's going on, and you are with them to support them and help them and understand them and empathize with them and still participate in class and do all these things, which will say a lot about you as a student when things get better after the pandemic. So if you are a 9th grader, in fact, if you are a middle schooler listening to this right now, develop those relationships now. I'm going to do a roundtable really quickly and ask, Richard and Jay what kind of advice they have to get close to your teachers specifically now during distance learning. But I would say that this is one of the most important things that students need to consider right now more than ever. So whoever wants to go first, give us your advice and tips for our students. Yeah, Jay, on how students can get close to their teachers right now during distance learning.
Sure. So I try to take advantage of momentum of events and catalysts. This is my stock market guy coming in me right now. But I would say we missed a big momentum, a catalyst, or maybe you're off on the cusp end of it. So if you're listening now and you want to take action, consider this. Teachers are there inherently to want to help you, to give you guidance and give you advice. And oftentimes, them wanting to give it to you is barriered by your unwillingness to reach out, your unwillingness to kind of lay out what your interests are and what you want to do. So, long story short, email your teacher, ask them how they're doing, blah, 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 blah. Say you're interested in some summer programs for this type of major interest you got. Do you have any recommendations? Now, I'm going to add a little bonus to that, okay? And again, hot take, here we go, guys. There are baby ways of asking questions, and then there are good ways of asking questions. Here's the baby way of asking questions or asking for help, especially to teachers. Hi, teacher. Yeah, I really want to find a program. I don't know what I'm interested in. Maybe math. I don't know. Thank you. Bye. Run into that all the time. And I realize a part of that's my job to kind of take them to that next step. But I'm thinking like, yo, if you can't do that first step, you're not ready for UCLA or higher, right? So with that being said, the better way to ask for help is always to put in 10% into the game, right? Say, hi, teacher, hope all is going well and blah, blah, blah. You know, I've been looking into blah, blah, blah programs. I found this one and I also found that one, pretty interested in those. But I'm also open to other interests and maybe towards this area. I was wondering how you felt about, or if you had any opinions about this and if you could recommend me others. And then do you see what that does? That creates an exchange. Hopefully the teacher's not lazy and the teacher will respond back within a week or two. And when they do, then the beauty happens because you can then reply back, oh, I'll check it out. Thank you. A month later, I got in. Thank you so much. I'll tell you how it goes. And it creates that dialogue.
That follow-up, by the way, that follow-up is so important. I have students who like send emails to teachers and they're like, I hope you had a great Christmas, like blah, blah, blah. I thank you, whatever, you know, how things are going. And then the teacher responds, student never responds back. That what was the purpose of sending an email, right? These conversations should be ongoing, right? These conversations should be consistent, not just like, happy Merry Christmas. Hope you like this $20 Starbucks gift card. Thank you. Like me now. Write me a good recommendation. See ya, right? That's not really how relationships work.
So in sum, I'd say try to ask college related advice that's bite sizable for them to be supportive to you. And then secondly, don't ask for help like a baby.
That's a good one. All right. What about you, Richard?
So I actually have like a checklist of things that I've been going through with my students, some of which I feel like is pretty basic, but surprisingly enough, many students are not doing. So I feel like just kind of going through it very quickly. Number one, if you're doing virtual learning and you're not turning your camera on, that's a huge mistake. For whatever reason, some students just don't feel like it's necessary, or they're like, well, there's only 2 or 3 people in my class that actually turn their cameras on, so I don't think I really need to. I taught psychology and sociology this past summer through Zoom, and there are students that just won't turn their cameras on, and there are students that will. Guess which students I feel like actually are paying attention and are more engaged with the learning experience? Definitely the ones that I can see their faces for. And so I feel like that's something really basic, but super easy to do, and that I would encourage literally every student to do if you're trying to get a good recommendation. If they can't see your face, there's no way for them to really formulate a strong connection with you. The second thing is another pretty basic one, but just participating often within your classes. I feel like one of the things I saw a lot of when I was reading applications for Yale, for example, was that the teachers would write like, oh, this person's really smart, tries really hard, but they're kind of quiet, or they don't participate that often. And I feel like it's as close to a death sentence as you can get without it being a huge red flag. Because if you are trying to get into a school like Yale and you're coming off as someone who's quiet and shy or just a little reserved, unfortunately, that immediately doesn't demonstrate the type of personality that as an admissions officer, we would expect to see within the students that are going to be coming to Yale, right? Mm-hmm. So participating is the bread and butter of, I think, just developing some kind of relationship with your teacher and showing them that you are, again, engaged with the learning experience. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, the last one that I would recommend would be attending office hours. So I think a lot of teachers have been offering office hour opportunities because they can't see their students in person. I think if they offer office hours for you, which not every teacher does, and I understand that, but if they do, you really should be going into those office hours as often as you can, if only to just show your face and to show them like, look, I'm already getting an A in this class. but I still want to do better and I still want to learn more. So even if you're just dropping by for 5 minutes to ask a simple question, maybe not a baby question like Jay was saying, but more, a more deep question or something that you can ask your teachers within a few minutes, I'd recommend doing that, because they're going to speak to this in your rec letters. They're going to say like, Jay didn't have to, like, he was already doing really well in my class, yet he would attend every office hours to try and learn more. And that's something that, of course, admissions officers are going to be really happy to see.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Just to wrap up, my one last thing is, when you put someone in the center of your conversation, it makes you feel like you think that person is important. So instead, the reason why you ask a teacher or someone else, how was your day? How are things going for you? Is because you're putting them in the center of the conversation. I really enjoyed your conversation about JFK's assassination. And I thought that highlighted really new insights about the political realm during that time. That actually inspired me to write a paper for the John Locke essay competition. Putting the teacher in the center of your motivation, putting the teacher in the center of your conversation is a way to develop relationships. That goes for anyone, not just your teachers. If you want to make a new friend, put them in the center of the conversation. Put them to be the most important part of your conversation. And I guarantee you that they will feel the most comfortable and confident talking to you, because that means you want to listen to what they have to say, less than what you have to say. So that is my last tidbit of advice. We were actually trying to keep this a very short podcast today, but there's a lot of really cool information that we wanted to bring out to you guys. So we apologize, but hopefully you stuck with us this entire time. Subscribe to us. We're also on YouTube now. So subscribe to us on YouTube, the Admission Masters YouTube channel, as well as the Hall Pass podcast website and application. We're also on Instagram. So check us out there. DM us if you guys have any questions on Instagram or things that you want us to talk about. We'll try to go live on there based on how many people are interested in that. And if you missed any of our episodes, it's been a while since we've been back, so find it on iTunes or our website. We really want to thank our sponsors, the Admission Masters, high school students who are struggling right now with their high school journey. If all of these advice were like, dude, they were speaking to me, I need this help, I need more personalized support, join the Admission Masters family. We will help you not only make you a successful student, but also an overall person. Again, thank you so much for tuning in with us today. We're excited to bring updated information and advice with our season 5. And for our new listeners, feel free to send us an email. We have an email address called thehallpasspodcast@gmail.com. So check us out or DM us on Instagram. Otherwise, we will be back soon with our next episode. We're super excited to be here again, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Hey, guys.